Good morning everyone, I'm Brooke and this is Ammon Acres. Today we are just going to go trim some water sprouts out of our orchard space. I thought I would bring you along, show you how it's done. If you like this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button, subscribe, let me know what you're doing in your outdoor space. I'm going to go grab my large loppers, my small hand shears, as well as a hat and some gloves, and then we'll get started. Thank you for joining me on another Ammon Acres chore day. This establishing shot is brought to you by me remembering halfway through. You'll see me go, oh no, and run off camera. That is when I decided, oh, I didn't get an establishing before shot and went and got it. So now you know, it's a little bit of insider knowledge. You will see me step off camera several times throughout this video. That is me stepping back to see where I want to cut. Sometimes it's hard to tell which are water sprouts and which are just regular limbs that we want to grow and flourish. I step back and make sure I'm cutting the right thing periodically, because otherwise you can either get a little overzealous or you can miss some significant, very obvious water sprouts. As soon as you step back you can see them, but sometimes you can't see them from inside. I am doing this trimming a bit late in the season, but it's still within the acceptable range of when you can trim. It's always better to catch these shoots. This is when I remembered to get that establishing shot. It's always best to catch these shoots when they're small. When they're small, you can actually just break them off with your thumb and you can get that collar so that they don't continue to grow back. When you let them get this big like we have, it's a lot harder to tame. A, it's harder to cut them. They're just really thick and you have to have loppers. And B, they a lot of times can't get the collar cut off without damaging another limb. So you leave the collar there and then you have more shoots that you have to handle from that site next year. So this is a classic do as I say, not as I do situation. I just oftentimes find I have more chores than I do hours in the day, and so I am frequently playing catch up in moments like this. And that's okay. It doesn't bother me. I get it done and I get it done when I can. But if you can get it done earlier, then I would recommend that you do that because it's better for the tree and it's better for you. This is one of the few daytime chores that my hat comes off during. It comes off because sometimes I'm in the shade, but it also comes off because it's hard for me to look up under such a wide brim and see the branches I need to cut, and so I oftentimes have to take it off. Sometimes I will wear a baseball cap to protect my hair from getting a bunch of leaves and sticks and debris in it. This time I just decided I gotta wash my hair anyway, so I let it get dirty and made it easier on me looking up to see all of the branches that I needed to cut. Water sprouts or shoots are pretty easy to identify. They are the branches that grow straight up. They typically start developing in the spring and you just see them. I mean, you can tell the difference already where I have cut and where I haven't, because they grow straight up and they really don't offer much to the tree. They don't produce fruit. They don't develop into branches that you want later. They are just a drain on the tree's energy, so it's best to take them. I got a wonderful mid-project break between that past tree and this current one. When my mom came over, she got to visit and pick up some garden veggies that I have that are late season, and it was really nice to just have that break. But I came back and started working and I noticed how much hotter it was than it was when I started, and so I was pretty much sweating the entire time through this video. You may also notice in this tree there are a ton of apples. I didn't get to thin this particular apple tree. I thinned the other three, but not this one, and you can tell the branches are very low and laden with apples. I even shake the apple tree branch occasionally to try and loosen some of those apples because it's just not good for the branches. It stresses them out and it can break them, so it's always best to thin them if you can. Something I find interesting about this apple tree is it is the only apple tree we have in the entire orchard that is a grafted tree. So it has two different apple trees grafted together, and you'll see that in the red apples and the yellow apples on that same tree. And that's because it's a self-pollinator, and so I'm always a little nervous when I am trimming this particular tree because I don't want to trim off the graft and the self-pollinating part of it and make that tree completely useless as a fruit tree. So it's a little nerve-wracking. The best way I've found to handle that situation is we mark the tree grafts that are the self-pollinator parts that we want to keep, and then I just very carefully prune around those to make sure that I'm not completely pruning off those. The problem with that particular tree is that it has very low branches and the graft part is low, and I would love to take that off and raise the canopy, but we can't because then it would not have any apples anymore. Along with the water shoots that are growing straight up, I also take off the little green branches that are growing on the interior of the tree. These are usually growing either through the tree to the opposite end or in some way that would eventually cause damage to the tree by rubbing or things like that. So I usually take those as well. I try to take them as early as possible. Sometimes they don't get caught until later, much like these water sprouts, but I do try to stay on top of that because of the health of the tree is just better. This part of the video is a great example of the difference in look that the tree will have from taking the water sprouts. So you can see in the areas that I have taken those little shoots off, it is a much better canopy. It makes more sense. It doesn't look as woolly and unkempt, and it also prevents the tree from having a canopy that reaches higher than you can pick, and then you have to continuously go get ladders and things like that. These varieties in particular were here when we bought the house, and they're a dwarf variety, and so keeping their canopy low and maintained is really important for these trees. I will actually insert a ultimate before shot here of what the trees and the orchard looked like the day we moved in and took possession of the house. They were really overgrown. They were the only thing that were watered. They had a lot of tall grass growing up in them, and so we have spent several years, the entire 4 years we've been here in fact, reclaiming these trees, reshaping them, getting them to a healthier stand, because some of them were so neglected that their branches were just being propped up by pieces of wood and twine. Twine was a big thing on this property. That's a whole other video. Maybe I'll do a story time about twine around Ammon Acres. But needless to say, in this orchard, everything was pretty neglected and it was not well maintained, and the trees themselves were breaking under the weight of their limbs and their fruit. Some of the water shoots were really hard to reach because they were at the top of the tree and they were surrounded by other branches that I didn't want to cut or take. But most of them were actually pretty accessible, and that is because we did a pretty hard pruning last season in the winter in their dormancy, and that worked out really well for us. The only thing that is a challenge with that is then it shoots up a ton of these straight water sprouts in the spring, and so that is what I'm currently battling. Had I been able to in the spring to just break off these little shoots when they were young, it would be a lot easier, like I had said before, but that was not to be. But that's okay. And now I am done. I'm done with that chore. All I have left to do is clean up. For us, the easiest way to clean up is to stack all of these branches on the tractor forks and just drive the tractor back to our burn pile. I used to move them manually, individually to the burn pile because I'm stubborn that way. But over the last year, I have really grown to love our tractor and all of the easy opportunities it provides, and so today I was more than happy to utilize it as I was a hot, sweaty mess. Many times on this particular project, I start off with the best intentions of stacking all of these branches as I go, and then it never works out that way. I get in the groove, I start cutting and dropping limbs a lot quicker than I would want to stack, and so I just leave them on the floor. And then I end up at the very end of that task being forced to pick them up on my hands and knees, and I think, oh my gosh, why didn't I just stack them as I went? But hindsight's 20/20 every time. Honesty is really important to me, so I feel it's important that I confess that our tractor does not back up that quickly. It backs up really slowly, and this sped up footage makes it just look way more quick than it actually is. The burn pile is the sheepers' favorite place to dine. It is their creme de la creme, so they will be very excited when they get to partake in these cuttings.
To get all the new pasties? Yeah, it's important. It's important for sheepers. Go. Sheepy bud.
thank you for joining me for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was entertaining or it was informative. I have 6 additional orchard trees to do, but I'm going to wait until the sun sets a little bit lower behind the horizon and it's a little bit cooler because it's rather hot out here today. But I'm really glad you could join me for the 3 I did. If you liked it, please subscribe, hit that thumbs up button, comment below about what you're doing in your outdoor spaces, what you're doing in your gardens. And until next time, I will see you in the next video. I need to stop talking so fast. And they just are camera hogs. They want to be a part of the action. It's hot.